I'm struggling to come up with a good pithy intro today on the OSMtable. Hello, and welcome to the OSMtable, your round table for discussing everything awesome. I'm Dylan.
I'm Basil.
I'm Tobias.
I'm Niko.
And today we're going to tackle a pair of, I think, intertwining questions specifically for TTRPG game mastering. The first is, what techniques and game mechanics work well for inspiration? You know, when you're having trouble coming up with something. And where do players fit into that process is the second one. You know, how do you involve players in the process? When can that sometimes be difficult? So we'll go around and do our opening statements, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion from there. I tend to think about inspiration in terms of blank page syndrome, where if I have to come up with something from scratch, I'm just going to freeze. But if I have some constraints or concepts to work off of, I kind of feel the ideas just kind of flow out of me. Dealing with the fear of judgment or the fear of missing out on a good idea has not really worked for me in that. It's always like priming the pump with some vague prompts that works well. Where this really clicked for me was several years ago, or a few years ago, I ran a Ryutama campaign, and it has this concept of world and town creation worksheets. Every time the party hit the road, I would take out a town creation worksheet, fill in a couple of the blanks, like town name or the terrain and environment, something I was feeling really strongly about, and then let the players fill in everything else. And I found that really worked because sometimes they would come up with this one sentence thing, and I'd start thinking about it and going, how would this work in practice? You know, what would this be used for? What would cause this situation? And then that would generate a bunch of ideas. Going into game mastering, you don't have to have a full plan worked out. You just have to have the next session or so planned out. On the other side of things, I do actually tend to be a little bit cagey about player input. Partly because I don't want to put people on the spot. I don't like required audience participation, you know, if I can't opt out of it. And some people don't want to be involved in every aspect. And like, I don't want to.
Dylan, this is a role-playing game. You have to participate as a player. It is required.
But there's a difference between like if you're playing D&D, the game has certain expectations that, you know, you're going to have a plan of what to do on your combat turn. You're going to roll, you know, skill checks and things like that. It doesn't always have the idea of, hey, here's this thing in the world. What does it look like to you?
I get that. I've had like both sets of players. Like you will get players that have complete buy-in. And it's like, here is my multiple page backstory of the cult that I grew up in and everything. It's like, great, I can mine this for details. And then you get ones like, oh, Warlock, great. What's your patron? I don't know. Make it up. Like, oh, great. Okay. And
you know, honestly, that has happened in the current D&D campaign I'm running, where Kevin's Warlock is like, I don't know, it's the Fiend. And I'm like, okay, what is an evil fiend going to do? How is he going to try to tempt people? And let that flow from there. I do like that. Like if someone writes up a backstory, I've had multiple people do that in this game. You know, I love that feeling. It doesn't feel like I'm ceding control of the game. It doesn't feel like I'm expecting homework out of someone. But it kind of goes back to what we've talked about before of you want players to feel comfortable letting you play with their ideas, and that requires kind of setting up an environment at the table. and for me, that's always like, take the idea, figure out how to put it into your world and your voice, and while still being true to the idea.
I always feel a struggle with that when I get, excuse me, the players that will hand me a long backstory, and it's like, okay, a lot of this is all great, but it doesn't quite mesh 1-to-1 in like the world that you're going to be in. So I will adjust some things and figuring out what do I feel like is adjustable that's still keeping the integrity of the story that this player has built up. And what's the line of, I have completely changed your backstory, or at least I've done something that you thought was integral, that I've made a change, and now we have to figure out how to compromise on that. It may never be that big of a deal, but I always feel paranoid anytime I feel like I got your backstory. I need to smooth the edges to get it to fit in the square that I'm putting it in. And I'm sorry, and I'm super sorry about doing this at all.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I'm doing that with Basil's character's backstory. He doesn't know it yet.
That's fine, because as far as I'm concerned, he's welcome to.
Yeah. We had a player that was playing with us for a while, left the campaign to play with some of his other friends, who gave me this backstory idea of like, his wife had been kidnapped by this dark fae who took on his form. And I'm like, oh, I can do a lot with that. I can get really dark. And I did. I think I prefaced it when we started moving into that arc with like, hey, if anyone's uncomfortable, we can stop and talk. Cause I'm like, he's stolen the life away. Is there like a half elf, half dark fae child now? Like what? How dark can we get with this? I don't know if this is going to be appreciated or not. Like, I don't know if I've crossed some line, but I want to, I want to set up that, like, hey, if you're not happy, lines and veils, man, or X card, right?
Well, I think, I guess I just want to kind of jump in because I've been kind of percolating about what you've been saying. And I feel like the whole reason you have this player, backstories and stuff like, this little plot line is that it ultimately has to serve the story, but also be entertaining to everybody there.
Yes.
And, I know that you mentioned like not wanting to put people on the spot, and I get that. You're going to have some people that will give you a short novel for their character, and that's perfectly fine. There's some people that'll give you a sentence, like you said, I'm just a warlock of, I don't know, you figure it out. And
right.
I think you have to realize that like the person that gives you a novel, they're doing it for their personal enjoyment. They love to write. They obviously are getting enjoyment out of doing that. So ultimately, like you don't, as a DM, don't need to memorize their novel they've given you. You do need to skim it to make sure that it matches, the tone, specific plot points. You can smooth out edges, like you said, but ultimately it's for their enjoyment. And that's what they're getting out of the campaign. And you still get like, plot hooks out of it, of course. You mine it for information.
And that's the biggest thing, is mining it for information. What I want to do is like surprise the player. Like I don't want them to give something that they're going to play out by rote, that they already know exactly how it's going to end. Like, when that comes to bear on the story itself, they need to be surprised. They need to face some choices.
Sure, absolutely. But in the same vein, the person that, just wants to give you, John the Fighter, and he's John the Third, the fighter. That's just like, every new character, he's just the next John in this lineage of Johns, fighters, the warriors of the town guard. Like you still need to pull some information out of them, even if you don't, put them on the spot necessarily, make them describe something. Ultimately, they're it's part of a party, and you are going to have the spotlight on you sometimes. So, like, what importance does John the Third, the fighter in the group, what is his importance to the grander story have to do? Like, they're not just a man at arms who guards the city watch, they have to provide something a little more. So it's up to you, the DM, to sort of draw those out.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting discussion. I think we should table that till we kind of finish, because I do want to come back to that.
Okay.
And I think that may actually tie into some future topics of like, what does that look like from the player side? I guess to finish up, I kind of have specific stylistic wheelhouses, and I know when it's like, hey, if I try to do something super whimsical, neither of us are going to have fun, right? I want to kind of keep those bounds and not overstep. And sometimes I just don't want to scrap my current plans and start from scratch. And when that happens, I view my job as a GM as like, I'm a negotiator, right? I want to be a good faith negotiator of like, yeah, this works, this doesn't. What can we get you that's going to make you happy? I will definitely say that as far as like a lot of tools for inspiration, I tend to be very particular. I don't use a lot of random tables and things like that because I like a lot of control, and I'm learning to deal with that.
You got to trust fall, Dylan. Trust
yeah.
fall.
In all seriousness, it's the difference between the random table is not. I'm not serving the random table. The random table is serving me. I can throw out the results if I don't like them and tweak them. And in fact, I better be doing something with them. I don't want to just like regurgitate something that I haven't put in my own voice.
Well, it also depends on the random tables can be very useful depending on how much you care about the results.
Yes.
Like, for example, say the party is on an adventure and they're going cross country and they're setting up camp. Maybe you want to do a roll to see, are they going to deal with the situation?
Yeah.
What is that situation if they deal with it? Are they going to deal with raiders? Is there wildlife? Is there just like a bear who just walks in and now they have to deal with a bear? Or is it something that you can then go, oh, well, I had these people attacking randomly, but actually I can take these characters that they're dealing with, and that could actually be an issue that this town over is having, and I didn't think about that, but now I've got a new encounter they can deal with. And it just really just depends on.
I tend to lean away from random encounters, but I do definitely think like you've got to be thinking about the environment. You're not just kind of like, I'm going to roll in the random forest table. Or if you do, you roll on the random, forest encounter table and you figure out how that fits in. There is a skill set of learning to cultivate inspiration. One of the things I like to do with things like that is if I take an idea, I can chew on it for a little while. And so, whereas if I'm just running right out of the book, right out of an adventure book, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants.
When it comes to random tables like that, I tend to be better pre-rolling that information in my prep the week before, rather than at the table being like, okay, well, you're going to have a random encounter. Oh, it's 2d4 plus 2 goblins. Why are there goblins here? We got to figure that out. But if like you rolled a bear, in your prep, maybe it doesn't have to be a combat encounter. Maybe a bear is maybe it's just a wild bear. Maybe it's hungry for a reason. Why is it hungry? Is there something happening in the woods? From there, you can sort of like springboard.
Maybe it's bear tracks, or maybe you just saw that there is a bear somewhere. You saw people trying to hunt a bear. I agree. Like random tables for Eve work way better as planning into the game instead of like actually at the table.
Yeah, and actually, like that's the type of inspiration I really like. Is you just give the slightest hint of a prompt, and you start thinking about. You get curious about what's happening around this, and like those are the times when I will end up like, I'm going to sit down to do GM prep, and I'm going to write way too many notes about this. Where was all this? How did all this just appear? And there's a bunch of those sorts of random prompts like that. Like in this current D&D campaign, I'm using a bean map where you take like dried rice or beans, you drop it on a piece of paper and you outline it. And I would never have done that because again, like, no, I'm going to create my own map. I like to have control. It's kind of funny. Like we had a friend who did one of those for an arts and crafts day and handed it to me and like, yeah, I want you to run a game off of this. Your next game off of this. And it's interesting because it's like, I don't have to prep a map. And also now I have these sort of geographic improv prompts. Okay, we're going to this new section. What's there? Well, we've got these mountains or we've got this ocean. How do I fit that in? Sometimes you're fudging things a little bit, but yeah, there's all kinds of little tools like that, and they don't have to be big. They just have to give you that tiny detail that you can be curious about.
I mean, after all, that's what a lot of pre-made adventures are. You buy a book,
yes.
it's already full of stuff anyway. When you're doing a homebrew campaign, really you're just making your stuff up as you go. And it's very easy to fall in the trap of starting from page 1, there and back again, by Bobo Baggins, and writing the full thing from page 1. But no, like, you need a map. Like you said, how you make the map, whether you go to some random table generator online and get it to draw a map for you, maybe you throw beans or rice or whatever grains you have available on a piece of paper, however you get that map, it's up to you, whatever gives you the most enjoyment to start.
Here's why I tend to use either very bare bones, like no real greater setting, like here's the town and that's it, or I just use a pre-build. Like I'll easily put something in Forgotten Realms or Eberron or something, just because like if I try to make a setting, it breaks my brain trying to figure out like the geography, the political nation states, and how everything works. Like, because that's what I want to do. That I was like, I want a fleshed out world. It's like, yeah, but that's a different game. That's not what I need right now. I need, here's my town, here's the general political factions, like here's everything. Great, I could just take Waterdeep. I'm good. I got what I need. Let's go.
Yeah, that was actually where the Ryutama town creation sheets really helped me. Was it forced me into this pattern of I don't have to plan everything out. I can kind of just in time plan out the next thing that's important. And then all those details that are out there in the world, I haven't fleshed them out, and I can kind of chew on them until I actually need them. So it is a skill set, I think. That could almost be a whole topic on its own. But that's kind of my opening statement. Basil?
Oh, we had opening statements? I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, we kind of, it's fine.
You should draw inspiration.
Time has been through Dylan. Yeah.
You should draw inspiration from Dylan statements to make your own.
Yeah.
Roll on a random table.
It can be as short as you want. That's not putting you on the spot.
So for me, especially gymming, but also being a player, a lot of times I'll craft a lot of things around moments.
Yes.
I think this will be a cool moment, or this will be a cool concept. Like one of the worlds I created for a campaign was, I used to be at an old internet forum, no longer exists. It was called Netrunner 2K2, because that was the guy. That was the name he used as a handle, and he made the forum, so he just named it after himself. So, but what I did was, it was a giant island in the sky, where that's where you mined all the floating rocks that were the core of the airships in this fantasy setting. And the way that people would cross the chunks of these floating islands were these giant nets that attached to everything. And the people who defended these islands, they were called netrunners, because they actually physically ran on the nets. That is not what Netrunner2K2.net was. That's not the meaning of Netrunner as far as that went. But the name, the concept of Netrunner, I just took the name and was like, well, what else could you run on? Well, you can run on nets. What about physical nets? Why would they be physical nets you'd be running on? And I'm like, well, I'm going to do a fantasy setting with airships. How do the airships fly? They fly using floating rocks. Well, I can have the tide, that's how that came together. That was just one of the nations that encompassed this world map I was building. So all it takes is one really silly idea of, I'm going to take this old internet haunt. What was it called? Okay.
Everything changed when the Net Nation attacked.
That's right. That's right. Well, no, see, they were more, because they were supplying the airships. They were like, Switzerland or whatever. They were a neutral, because they were actually arming everybody else. So They really weren't all that neutral. They were just, warmongering in their own ways. But it also depends on, what scale of stuff you want to do. Do you want to do like a world encompassing thing? Yeah, I am an anime JRPG nerd. Everything I was building has been world scale conflicts. Y'all got to save the world from a giant evil or a dragon or somebody being bad. But you might want to just build like a big old town and have much more smaller scale adventures. It really depends on what you're looking for. And if, say, you're a player these things can also be useful. And you don't have to write reams of text if you don't want to. A lot of the players I played with were those, because again, as I've said many times before, I'm a theater kid. So, and I tended to game with other theater kids. So usually everyone came with their own novellas for all our backstories. And I'm like, all right, cool. And a lot of times I would tell them, yeah, also, while you're giving me this novella, build a town for me. Just go on ahead. Give me the highs and lows, and I would make little worksheets for them to build off of. A recent episode of friend of the show, Nobutaka Faircloth, he does the Coffee and Carbuncles podcast, which is it's Final Fantasy 14, but it's a lot of RP based. And he actually did his episode 28 was crafting a roleplay character. And it's a really, really good resource with a lot of really good questions that if, say, you are listening to this episode and you're more of a player, or even if you're a GM and you're wanting to create some NPCs, his little podcast that he did that was based off a panel he did at Gateway Fate is a really good just starter. So you want to build a character. Here's a lot of questions and things to think about. And I highly suggest sort of as a companion piece to this, if you're just thinking about, how to fill in those blanks, it's a really good, write down his questions and make a little worksheet for yourself. It wouldn't be not a bad idea. Niko?
Okay, so now I'm on the spot. As much as half an hour into the show is on the spot could be at this point. Yeah, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I often roll in a pre-built setting because I know that well enough that I could just put in, even if I whole cloth make a town, I could just put it somewhere. And if not, I'll just go very bare bones. And in terms of figuring out, that's setting material, but figuring out something for the players to do, it kind of depends on what is the long term, if there is a long term goal. Am I doing a ongoing months to year long campaign, or am I doing a one shot, or this is 3 sessions? This is going to be an open shut case, because if it's an open shut case, then I feel much more okay lessening the amount of input from the players, because you guys come up with whatever backstory you want. I don't have time to use it unless it's something super integral. But if I want to pick a player at random and go, okay, you're going to have this secret thing or something, there's that. But if it's going to be a lived in world for my players, I want them to have the ability to have that say, to go, okay, you have lived here. Your character is lived here. Are you a big deal, or are you involved in something? What's your backstory? What can I pull from it? What can I input in the world? What holes do you have that I could fill? What's your warlock patron? You don't know? Great. I will figure that out. And all sorts of things. So it really just depends on, I guess, what the goal of the game is. Is it going to be me leading through a 2-hour to 6-hour journey, or are we building a world together?
Yeah, I think when I was using the D&D campaign I'm running now as an example, this has gone on for a year and a half, I think. And so when we finish an arc, it's okay, well, what do we want to do next? And I'm kind of at the point where we've kind of gotten past all the initial setups. So now I'm kind of depending on what does everyone seem interested in? And Basil, your backstory is something that I'm chewing on, because it's it could be some prompts. It's pretty explicit.
That was specifically why I wrote it.
Yeah.
Because my character in Dylan's game was initially, because I'm a theater kid, I could easily railroad all over the party and just take everything by the lead and go. But there were other players at the time who really wanted to take the lead. And I was like, you know what? I'll make a character who is perfectly willing to take a back seat and let them do the driving, as it were. Now, some of those players have left, and everyone else is like, okay, Basil, what does your character think? And I'm like, oh, okay, now it's time to hop in the leader spot and move this party along, and it's fine. I don't mind doing
I've
it.
had to play that character sometimes, and it's fine. That's probably almost a different topic of like how do you handle that continuum of player types.
But I could also tell that a lot of your initial ideas, we kind of did them.
Yeah.
And they were good, they were fun, and we went to a satisfactory ending. Like there have been several points where if we wanted to go and we saved the day and the campaign is over, I would have been like, yeah, this is a good stopping point. But we keep going and that we find other cool things to do. Yeah. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to give Dylan some stuff because he really could probably use players to give him things to chew on. So I went, all right, here's my character. What's the backstory? And a lot of his backstory actually ended up coming from a feat I picked. I picked a feat because I thought it had a cool effect to it. And it also gave me an attribute bump that I needed to move my character to get some skills better. But it was called, I think it was Gift of the Gem Dragon. And I thought to myself, well, I know that it's just called that, and technically anything could be that. It doesn't have to be a gift from a gem dragon, but why was it a gift of a gem dragon? And why does my character just randomly have it now? That makes no sense. He's never met a dragon. Why would that? And I thought about it, and I created a whole backstory all because of this one feat. And to explain to myself why my character took this feat. And that was all the inspiration apparently I needed.
Tobias?
I will just key off of that. I do think it's something that Dear Creation from 5th edition, pick your race, you pick your class, but then you need to pick your background. And sure, there's some generic backgrounds in the HB, but in like some of the other books, they have a little more stuff that's tied to specific things in the Forgotten Realms or whatever setting is there. And I've seen a lot more games lately do something like that, where rather than pick race, class, background, it's like, okay, well, what's your ancestry? Like, where are you from? Okay, then you pick, well, what's your job? What's your role in the world? And then maybe we can find like a class that fits shapes around that. You know, you sort of work backwards in that way. And I think just doing it that way, rather than saying, okay, well, I'm going to play a dwarf fighter, you know, because I know they're very strong in combat, you kind of go backwards. Like, okay, well, what does my guy specifically do? Like, why is he here? How did he get there? He didn't just like spring out of the womb as a level 1 dwarf fighter, fully bearded. You know, like why? What am I making this guy for?
Maybe he did. Maybe that's how dwarves work in your world.
Could be.
Yeah,
it could be. So yeah, I think like you said, Basil, like even just keying off a feat, even if it just has a funny name, or maybe from instance the Black Book where gem dragons are a thing, suddenly it gets like the wheels turning, to do something extra, something interesting and different. I guess though, as my sort of thesis statement is bank everything. Every little information you get, every little inspiration you get, write that down. Take a page out of your notebook, your binder, and just write hooks and just everything you think of. And again, session 0, we talked about session 0 last time. You players sit down in front of you and they give you, Bob the Dwarf Fighter, and you start asking those questions like, okay, where is he from? You start writing down names. You give family. Is family important to Bob the Dwarf Fighter? Okay, well, there's a family you could threaten him with later. A family challenge you could threaten him with later. Maybe his protective dwarf mother shows up later and she becomes, a major plot point. That's something you've taken just from that one sentence. And just write that down. I think I mentioned before, I have a page or Google Doc full of random names. I work in a call center and I see names all the time from a lot of different cultures and ethnicities. If I see something that says, man, that sounds like a really cool character, I'm going to write that down and it's going to get used later. I've had several people, don't tell them, under, NDA, confidentiality agreements, but, several parts of people's names have gotten used in games. So just bank that. My favorite little tips and trick is steal from movies. You watch a movie, maybe a heist movie, a modern movie even. You think it's got a cool like general outline. Take that shit. Make Ocean's 11 in D&D. Just file the serial numbers off and redo it. Because what happens is even if a player recognizes, oh, wait a second, you're just doing Ocean's 11. We're just playing Ocean's 11. Have you ever watched a movie and like, I could do that better. If I were that thief, I wouldn't make that dumb mistake.
Yeah.
Guess what? Your character gets to not make the mistake now. You get to act out what if you were doing that movie but better. So even if they, in tune what inspiration you've got, you at least can, do it in a different way, do it in a new way. So that's something that I do whenever I do have a blank page. When we start off, you have an idea for what you want the campaign to be. You know what type of tone this is going to be, whether that's a cozy Ryutama style game, maybe that's an epic world saving, JRPG style game. Generally what it's going to be. But one of my issues is pacing. I had that idea, but then it's like, okay, the first hook is going to be this. They are breaking out of prison. Classic, Elder Scrolls intro. Maybe they are meeting at a bar, getting hired by a wizard to do something like that, something very generic. Well, outside of that, then you got to think of, okay, well, I have 20 levels of a campaign to tell. I can't go straight to the epic ending. We've got to kind of pace it. And sometimes I have a problem where it's like, well, I want to pace it like it's going to be your fantasy trilogy novel series, but we need filler and we need stuff, to get to that point for each point. So at that point, we go, okay, let's look at the character backgrounds they've given me. Maybe I introduce Bob's mother at this point. Maybe I introduce the Warlock. You mentioned the Warlock earlier. Maybe a guy just wants to play a Warlock because he likes Eldritch Blast. But the Warlock already has a huge patron. That's a big, huge, use me. This is a big thing. And any Warlock you have, that's just a big red flag.
And that patron is probably evil.
Oh, yeah. They're if not evil, they're using them.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. There's probably a reason it's working at cross purposes.
I mean, evil or not, there still is a huge hook there. It's like maybe it's a benevolent, Fae god that's just trying to use you to save the world and to act through you. Okay, well, you still have to introduce that. There's a reason it's not just a deity, right? There's a reason they're not just doing a typical mage. Even if the player doesn't really want to contribute a novel of a backstory, you still, again, just like a TV series, we shift the spotlight to a new character every episode. And eventually that Warlock will sort of be pushed, call of adventure or whatever, into the spotlight. So there's a point where we can say, okay, who is the fiend? Maybe it's not a fiend at all. Maybe it's, I don't know, Elminster. Maybe Elminster is a patron deity for some reason. How? I mean, Elminster is a badass, but why is he somebody's patron deity now? That's the thing you get to answer as you progress through the thing. And one thing that I really enjoyed doing the last few games I've ran is just if we're in the middle of something and they're just in a role-playing situation, I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, I want to see this acted out. I want to see what happens here. I think I mentioned last time, one of my other players, they found a witch in the wilderness they were in. So rather than just saying you found a witch and she has spells and you can do, she tells you this, let's make this something memorable for the players. Let's give them something, like an oracle or a vision or something of the future. So you can use things like that, whether it be, your Warlock, for instance, bringing in information there or a different character altogether. Just look for those little times where you can pull more information out. Just like you're watching a TV show and you're getting some really good scenery chewing scenes out of that. And just, again, bank that information. If you get something really cool, if the witch gives there's a really cool conversation there and there's a portent for the future for a character that you just come up with in the minute, write that down. That's going to get used later. Chekhov's gun, man. Everything. Chekhov's +1 longsword. Everything gets used in this. We use every bit of the kill here, Dylan. Every bit of the kill.
No, in all seriousness, one of the arc we're currently on and I kind of hate for this to be, hey, let's talk about the current D&D campaign. But the Warlock, when we were fighting, again, this dark fae that had kidnapped this other guy's family, our Warlock at the end of the fight uses the ability to absorb souls for temporary HP and okay, Warlock's haunted now, man. He just absorbed something really evil. He starts tinkering around with the Amulet of the Plains. He's going to try to, something takes over and he tries to use it. And I'll be honest, Basil, I feel like that was very clumsily introduced. I kept hinting at it. I'm I don't know if they're interested in this. But once we got a little into it, it felt like people started making decisions, right? People started investing in things and it was oh, okay, no, this is good. And I actually think that's part of the loop there is one thing you can take inspiration from is what your players respond to. Right. We were talking earlier about different types of interaction. I tend to be the type of player that's like, hey man, I don't want to start poking around in your concept of this world at character creation. And I also want to figure out who this guy is. So, through the process of playing him, but at some point he's going to come to a decision. He's going to come to a really interesting choice. He's going to get engaged. And if you're the DM on the other side of a player doing that, you can go, oh, this tells me something about what the player or the character or both cares about. What do I do with that? That is information.
Absolutely. What the person, the other player, what they want out of the story is important. And if they are playing a paladin and they want that paladin to fall, they thought about, that's not something a DM does to screw over a paladin player. That's something the paladin player wants to experience that story. And again, from both sides, just to use that as an example, like that's seen that be used a lot as something, a punishment for paladins, things like that. That again is plot, and it comes together to make a more interesting story for everybody.
Yeah, and it can sometimes surprise you. Like again, going back to the warlock example, Kevin is playing this warlock. We kind of get to the end of this long arc, and I'm like, I'm not sure how invested people are in the warlock's haunted story. And they get to the monastery, they do the exorcism, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to use prestidigitation to make my robes. I'm going to be, Scibadanthus the White now, like Gandalf the White. And we're kind of talking about this, like, no, I kind of feel like something's changed in him. Oh, that's interesting, right? Like, that means something's going to happen. I need to be paying attention. Yeah, and just things like that. Once you've gotten started, which can be the hardest part, like coming up with ideas out of nowhere. Once you've got NPCs, what do they want? What are they willing to do to get it? That's kind of pieces of information you could bring to bear on the storyline later if you're kind of hitting a blank point.
It also depends on the kind of GM you are.
Yes.
You might be a GM who is very good at just yes-anding everything and can, turn on a dime and just do things as they come. Or you might be a GM where you've built out this entire world and all its mechanisms and all its peoples, and it all lives in your brain. So you know that if the players do A, oh, well, I already know that affects B, C, D, and E over here. Don't worry. No, and we'll get to those. Don't worry about that, And it really just depends on and what levels of this is your GMing that you can play with. But but also never forget that the whole point of all of this is collaborative storytelling.
Yes.
It is a part of a group, and the DM or GM or whatever M that you happen to be using for the game you're playing is just one part of it. The players are also other parts of it, but you all are probably invested in telling this story together. So don't worry about it so much, folks. You're in a group. It's okay to do group things.
I want to bridge something like the don't worry about it bit, because like Tobias's point about like just bank everything, like steal from everywhere you can. If you do get some sort of paranoia that your players might think less of you if they realize, oh yeah, this is Ocean's 11, to borrow the same example. Fortunately, and this is often used against us as nerds a lot, but we are often very easy to go the other way of like, oh yeah, that's the thing I know. I like that now. So, the entire premise of Ready Player One and all sorts of other kind of nostalgia grabs is just like playing on people liking the things that they know. But this is a good way to use it. I think. I don't think you run into a situation with a player going, I recognize where you got the thing you're using from and hate it. They will recognize it and go, oh, I get it. I'm in the in crowd, especially if they're like the only one at the table that gets it. But if you do want to counter that, just mix and match. Just pull from different sources, especially pull outside of fantasy if you can. Like my last ongoing campaign, I built a lot of the city, the local town level, which is out of Deadwood, because there's very much that kind of like wilderness on the edge frontier town. but very much not a fantasy town at all. But it's a great source of inspiration. I've tried to do adventures based on you're playing the movie Dread. You were stuck in this building and have to work your way up or down the dungeon, but it's essentially Dread. So you could pull from all sorts of sources and don't feel bad about it, because chances are your players, if they recognize it, because you could change it enough to they don't, but if they do, they will appreciate it because they are in on the joke.
Yeah, I actually think that's an important part, is to be transparent. Like, okay, I'm not a master storyteller here. I'm winging certain things. That's fine.
Don't lie if you get called out on it. Just like, yep,
right.
Stole it from.
So one of the actual play podcasts I've listened to over the years, it's not Critical Role, but I mean, just because people are like, oh, I wonder which Critical Role this is. Well, it wasn't Critical Role. The central conceit that the GM built his entire world around was actually based off of a thought experiment thinking about the ramification of nuclear weapons.
Okay.
And how, because he also does like a science comedy podcast where they will find stories about current medical innovations or scientific discoveries or this and that. And so he's constantly pouring through different scientific papers and journals and things. And in one of these, he found a pontification of, okay, well, let's accept the fact that there are nuclear weapons and how they got to them and what happens if this happens or that happens. And he took one of these papers and he reinterpreted it in a magical setting based in D&D and built everything else around that. And the moment that was unveiled, this is what he did, was very much like The Prestige, where the people playing it, everyone listening to it were like, you did what? That was what this was? This whole thing was based off of that? And he was like, yeah. I'm a smart nerd. And we were like, yeah, guess you're a smart nerd. Good job. You got us all. It was.
I actually think that's a pretty big part of inspiration, is like not just other forms of media, but in your job, in your hobbies, you're encountering different pieces of how the world works. And they're going to end up being things that you would never have thought of, that are just not intuitive until you read them in a magazine or something. And you can bring those to bear on, your world. I've definitely felt like I like to try to get out and hike some. That's a lot of material I can go to of like what's walking around in the woods actually like versus what would it be like if I don't know about it. And I'm sure in this particular podcast, it's like, okay, these are here. How do we deal with it? What structures do we put in place to deal with it? And that's that deepens your world.
Well, and so many creators, not only just in the tabletop setting, but people like Ikehara, Hideaki Anno, Hideo Kojima, hell, even like Quentin Tarantino. These are people that go out and they experience lots and lots and lots of things, whether it's books, whether it's TV shows, whether it's movies, whether it's games, whatever is out in the real world. And they're able to reinterpret a lot of these things in really neat and interesting ideas. So once again, as Tobias has said, bank everything.
It even helps when you start your campaign planning. We all have original ideas, and no one could ever possibly replicate the original idea that you would come up with as a dungeon master storyteller. But elevator pitches. Okay, you mentioned Hideo Kojima. Okay, Metal Gear is just B-movie Kurt Russell with philosophizing on what is a soldier. Like, that's really what it is. Metal Gear, just like, that's the elevator pitch. We're going to do a B-movie, 80s B-movie, but it's going to be let's talk about nuclear armaments and things like that. You mentioned the guy, the podcast. Okay, what if we were to do like a modern look at post-nuclear technology, but through the lens of arcane magic powers? What does that look like for a D&D sort of style setting? So you can easily just take an idea like that, which you could just roll on a random table if you need to come up with a campaign, and then just go from there. Kind of branch off from that simple idea.
Which reminds me of, and it's a video game thing again, but in Final Fantasy II, you can get the spell Ultima, and it's terrible. It doesn't work. And the whole concept is this is like the most ancient, most powerful spell, but the key word here is ancient. It's old. It's fallen apart. It doesn't do what it does anymore, and you have to level it up to get it to be. It can be the most powerful spell, but you now have to put the work into it. And that's your campaign, folks. That's your campaign, GMs. They're old and decrepit and terrible till you work at it and level it up and make it good by banking everything.
I mean, isn't that like the idea of the ultimate there? That wasn't that just like an episode of Freerun, like really early in the TV show, where there's a big demon. He's like, no magic has ever defeated me. You know, for 1,000 years, no magic's ever beaten me. And it's like, yeah, magic's like changed and grown better in 1,000 years. So
there's a Buffy episode that is that.
Oh, like that too? Okay, yeah.
It was like no weapon forged by man has ever defeated me, and he was like sealed away like 200-300 years ago. So when he shows up, Buffy has a rocket launcher and just shatters the guy.
So, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother campaign idea right there. Mm-hmm. Like, magic's changed. People have changed. Magic technology has changed, you know? So, again, to steal from everything.
You know, I'll be honest, that sounds really daunting, I think, if you come in from something like D&D, where it's like, no, here's the spell book. But the campaign I'm running, I've kind of built everything from scratch and kind of just like, okay, I have the vibe of this world, and it's kind of low magic, and certain things don't exist. Like, there was a whole plot arc that was like, teleportation doesn't exist in this world, and then everyone leveled up and like, oh yeah, we can just take teleport. And I'm like, okay, I gotta retcon some things, right? You can do that. That's fine.
Or don't retcon it, build on it. How the fuck did you guys get teleport? It doesn't exist. Where did you find?
I mean, I kind of did. Early on in the campaign, they have an amulet of the plains that only holds like a charge, and they roll a d6 every day. And so it's like, okay, I can just hand wave this. My point is, like, don't be afraid to play in those spaces, because you can always kind of hand wave it. And if you're playing with people you trust, you know, again, you're playing to have fun. You're not playing to create high art. They're going to understand that. They're going to work with that sort of thing.
And if you want constraints, no teleport, you want that to be a hard, fast rule of your world, that session 0 right there. It's like, all right, guys, these spells are not allowed in this campaign, or whatever is like off the table.
That's assuming you think about it. And I didn't, because I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of the lore. Like, that's the horrible secret about me being a GM. I know the mechanics. I do not know the lore. And that's why I made my own world, because that way I don't feel like I'm screwing up someone else's work. And I also want to add, you guys said, you know, hey, put in the work. You don't have to put in a ton of work. You just have to, you know, once you get practiced at being a GM, you kind of like, I know what I need to plan out. I know what I don't need to plan out. I can kind of get a vibe for my world. I can improv certain things on the fly. What magic exists, what technology exists if it comes up, and I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to be happy with it, you know, the next day when I think about it. It's like, you don't have to do more work. You just have to know where to put the work. And a lot of it isn't by necessarily knowing the mechanics better or sticking to the mechanics better. It's knowing how to kind of like, what things can you play around with in your world.
Dylan, are you telling me that the whole thing is that we're just a group of friends trying to have fun while rolling dice?
Yes, there's nothing wrong with beer and pretzels games. Maybe make them a little elevated.
Elevated beer.
Yeah, put some mustard on it.
Oh. Brown mustard.
Brown mustard.
Beer mustard, beer cheese, something. No, I've definitely been at groups, pub groups that are, they kind of forget we're just there to have fun as friends, you know? So it's very important, like you said, to trust your players. And I think it's good to have a group that you play with for a while so you can get that rapport with them for sure. But to go, what you're saying is, basically to work smarter, not harder. I love being a lazy DM. That's why I like to bank everything. I like to let other people, including movie writers and directors, do the hard work for me. And I just jump into the role and take somebody else's idea and then run with it. That's why I like to make players. Even if I don't, crack the whip and make them write a novel, I take the ideas they've given me so that if I do find myself staring at a blank page, I do need to improv. Okay, well, Bob's mother showed up. She's complaining to Bob about something or another. Like, why? Why is she here? Like, did something happen back in the homestead that Bob needs to see to? Do we need to pull the group over to that to deal with that situation? Whenever you're in a position where you need to yes and something, you need a list of things that you're pulling from. And again, let everyone else do the work for you.
Yes. All right, we're coming to the end of an hour. Does anyone have anything else that they want to talk about? Anything we missed? It does occur to me, we also talked a little bit about, Niko, you said something about like you don't want to flesh out a world. I think it is very funny that I have the opposite thing of like, no, I don't know about these campaign settings. I want to do that work so that I'm not worried about doing it right by the campaign setting.
I think my outlook is like, one, I like to research a lot. So I like to, like, if it's something that's like, I know I'm going to be in Cormier or in the Forgotten Realms or something, I'm going to look up like exactly what is published about this town. And it's like, okay, I don't like that. That's out the window. I'm going to use what I want. And because I am presenting it as my iteration of the world, and Ed Greenwood's not going to come and bang on my door and say, don't do this. Actually, he would actually say, yes, thank you. That's great.
I do appreciate there's a lot of campaign settings I've read. The Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG book does this. I think Old Gods of Appalachia does this. They're like, hey, your world may be different than the official world. That's fine.
Old Gods is great because, like, great, you're already different than the actual Appalachia. So
yes, I mean that's kind of their point.
I hope that is different than the actual Appalachia.
That's true.
But no, it's like if someone wants to do like a published setting or even a published adventure, if you want to grab a Wizards hardback book or something from another publisher of the publisher of the game you're playing at, don't feel that you have to stick to the letter of the book. Like, you could change everything in that book you want. I think using published material is a great onboard for going and like, okay, here is a prompt. It is, as we talked about, here's a prompt for me to play with, and now I could adjust this or play in this playground however I want to do that. There's plenty of opportunities to be creative and inventive just using either a published adventure or copying from your favorite book or your favorite movie or anything. You don't have to create the entirety of the campaign, the story, everything just on your own.
Right. And it is kind of funny because I think we are kind of at the two extremes there. And in both cases, you don't get that for free. Like, just because you're using a published campaign setting doesn't mean you don't have to have some sort of inspiration on how to use that, how to do it in your own voice and do something sustainable. I think that's a huge part of it if you want to keep a game running for a while.
Another thing I guess to key off that I said bank everything, but another thing you should bank would be tools and resources. So things like tables. We talked about tables. Even if you don't use them literally, you can use them as inspiration points, but you have to find those tables to begin with. And maybe maybe you buy a splat book full of tables, full of very specific type of things, to save that so you can use it later. I think that I struggle with is coming up with dungeon map. I like the idea and I wish I was better at like drawing a dungeon map from scratch. I think I get too much analysis paralysis. Like, is a hallway, is a room? What is that room for? Like, what is this for? Does it make sense in terms of architecture? I'm not an architect, so I'm putting things together. Sometimes that can be fun, but it can be difficult for me from a blank page to start.
Yeah, there are a lot of tips and tricks around that. I have the same problem because it's like, now you're making branching paths and this is getting really complicated. There's lots of places you can get maps online. I think the artist that's in the new 2024 DM's guide is
Dyson.
It's Dyson Logos. Yeah.
Anytime I need a generic quick map, I'll usually look at Dyson Logos just for like, give me something I could mess with it if I need to, and that works out really well.
Yeah. And one trick I've heard, I think this was one of the things that Mike Shea talks about on Sly Flourish, is like, you don't have to tie every room to exactly what's in it. You've got a list of things that are in this dungeon, And when the party comes to a room, maybe you decide at the time what's most appropriate to be there. Like, there are ways you can abstract that out. I definitely know that's tough for me. And I think part of that is also knowing your strengths as a GM. It's like, okay, I'm not good at this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this. I'm going to put my effort into creating other types of choices that are still hopefully going to be interesting.
I've seen other DMs that I've gamed with. They go out and they will buy like the cartographer software because they think it's going to make them a suddenly better DM. But you still need that spark, and maybe you have the cartographer's brain. Maybe you don't. But having things like those websites you're talking about, whether they're pre-generated maps, maybe they're a map generator is the thing that I would use a lot. Just use the map generator as a starting point for something larger. Just find tools like that and save those tools for you because you're not expected to do everything from scratch. Like you said, we're not writing the next American, novel here. You're just playing games with friends, really, at the end of the day. So, like, come up with whatever resources you need for yourself. Bank those in your toolbox.
You're not even writing a published campaign setting or a published adventure. Whatever you write, its purpose is a tool at the table. All right, so I think we'll end up there. Let's go around and everyone will do links and plugs. Basil?
You're here. You're already listening to the thing that I'm going to plug, which is, the OSMcast family of podcasts. Like Dylan just did this so he wouldn't have to say it himself later. But
finally, bank everything.
So, that's right. That's right.
Players work for you.
Yeah.
So bank this. The OSMcast, your podcast for everything awesome. The Carbuncle Chronicle, your podcast for everything awesome. And Final Fantasy XIV. We've also got, this is the OSMtable you're listening to, where we do roundtable discussions, predominantly about tabletop role-playing games. We also got awesome interviews. We have various interviews with all sorts of great people from all across anime and video games. For example, we've recently been putting out over the past year a bunch of interviews that we did at last year's MTAC, and we still have a few more to put out, but it's a great con in Tennessee, in Nashville, and Niko's going to tell you all about it.
MTAC, what's that?
MTAC is the Middle Tennessee Anime Convention coming up April 3rd through the 5th in Nashville, Tennessee. Pre-registration is live now. We hope to be releasing some guest information in the next coming weeks. Go see some panels from Basil. Hopefully he got his panel applications in on time.
I did. And
Good.
I'm told that they've already been approved.
All right. And
so they better be, because this is an edited and live recording. It's totally not getting edited out.
But yeah, you could check that out, mtalk.net. You could follow me. Pretty much everything I do is at nicholasqualls.com, which is the link tree to all my stuff. Top of the links is my reading in 2025. If you want to see the books that I read last year and what I thought of them, the 10 standout ones listed on there. And follow me on Blue Sky. Blue Sky is just search for nicholasqualls.com.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm also on Blue Sky at itsbasiltime.com.
And I'm also on Blue Sky at Tobias at bluesky.social or whatever. Just Tobias, you'll be able to find me. And that's pretty much the only thing I do on the internet publicly, except for Carbuncle Chronicle. Probably going to be a MomoCon this year. Almost definitely going to be a MomoCon this year. I might be a guest at MTAC.
No, that's just a lie spread on the official OSMcast Discord. The place where you can go for lies about MTAC.
If you want to learn more about that potentiality, go ask Charlie on the OSMcast Discord. He's here. He loves fielding questions about me specifically.
Or join the OSMcast Discord, which you can find a link to at awesomecast.com, OSMcast.com, and let Niko know that Tobias would make an excellent guest as a featured panelist.
Niko isn't on the OSMcast Discord, though.
Oh, that's right. Technically, that's someone else.
You could be thinking of Thrifty Nickel McFacepats. So.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. At Nicholas Qualls.
Thrifty Nickel.
Thrifty Nichols.
It's So many layers of inside jokes. It's just, you will never understand this. Just come to the Discord, I guess. You can find my stuff at dylanwolf.com pretty much everywhere. Links.dylanwolf.com is kind of my list of various side projects and things like that. I guess since we're talking about it, like I've submitted panels to both MTAC and MomoCon. I'm probably going to submit some TTRPG one-shot sessions at both MTAC and MomoCon. So that's what I got. As Basil was saying, OSMcast.com is kind of your resource for everything we're doing. We've got that Discord where you can hear tons of lies about cons throughout the Southeast, especially
and
MTAC.
Truths.
And truths. One of our members always tells lies, and one of our members always tells the truth, and you get one question. Roll an insight check. You can find our Patreon where I don't know if we're still doing bonus episodes.
We'll be getting back to it eventually. That is a goal for this year, is to bring back the whole bonus episode idea.
You can find OSMcast merchandise at tpublic.com. Link on awesomecast.com. That's for OSMcast as well as our complete family of podcasts. I think that's it. So this is another episode of the OSMtable Down. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
That was a good one.
It fits the topic, right?
Or you could never use it again.
It's technically true. And then we'll cut.
I was trying to come up with something too, but like, roll an initiative check, roll an outro check. I don't know.
Bank everything.
Everything banks. Light it up. Let's go.
I got that reference. Niko didn't.
I did not.
Can't wait till someone notices that we've announced that you're our MTAC 2026 special guest.
Niko said it. We have it on recording here.
I think someone needs to take that screenshot and post it in the MTAC Discord, right?
Oh,
that's what we need to do. I mean, people need to know the decision that we've made here.
I don't have a signed contract, so no.
Oh, I can send Tobias letters.
You've got a handshake deal.
I can make MTAC letterhead.
Can forge it. Okay. Gonna be a lawsuit here.